Hello everyone, it's been a little while since I had a chance to post, but now I'm making a little detour from the 6BQ5EL84 series, and that's partially because I received a request if I could guide you through building a single-ended tube amplifier. And before I answer that question and then start leading you down that exciting path, I'd like to talk about something really crucial in audio that everyone notices after a while, and that's the root of the problem, why you always see that there's something better on the horizon. You read and watch reviews that there's a new amplifier out there or a new pair of speakers, and they are much better compared to something similar in its price class, and everyone is really happy. But then the next month something again comes up in the same price category, and the person who reviewed the previous really good, really best thing now thinks that it's not so best anymore, but this new thing is so much better than it was. And of course, within a few months, that really exciting shiny new toys becomes just as dull as anything that was reviewed a year ago, 5 years or 10 years ago. And ultimately, once you've been into audio for a while, you will notice that there is just an illusion of development, and really 10 years ago, 20, 50 years ago, there were just I would say not as many great products, amplifiers out there as there are today, uh, because for one, I would say that today there's probably a much wider choice of great stuff than we had 50 years ago, but today is also a much wider choice of truly mediocre stuff than we had when we look back. Uh, well, back 50 years ago, of course, we had tons of mediocre gear and much worse than what we have today as well. But back then, everyone saw quite a bit more clearly what was something truly excellent and truly mediocre, and now it's kind of almost a quest to find out what works and what doesn't. So before I show you that what is the root cause of this dilemma, why we find something really fascinating one day and then the next month it's not so good, or you do an improvement in your system and it gets better, then you do a second improvement, it's even better, and then you change a third component and now it's much worse than it was before. And what's going on, what's the reason for that? So we will go into that as well, but all of you must be wondering, what is this triode amplifier doing here? It's a single-ended triode amp, and it's a Sun Audio 2A3 single-ended triode. It's a low-power amplifier with marvelous, gorgeous Tamura transformers. And Lou brought this little beauty into my attention just recently, and this is their website. It's a Japanese company, Sun Audio, and they use Tamura transformers. So this is relating to the question, if you want to build a single-ended triode amplifier, this is the warning you are going to get from me, and this is the same warning I have received from Herb Reichert 15-20 years ago. And I was in your shoes, and as a starting audiophile, of course I wanted to build a single-ended triode amp as my first project. And then I was reading Herb's writing on his Flesh and Blood amplifier, and he explicitly wrote that the heart and the core of that amplifier is the output transformer. And if even if you are going to copy it 100%, but you use a different output transformer than what he was using, it's not Flesh and Blood anymore, not even remotely close. So I was not deterred, but then I looked up the prices of those transformers that he uses, and I got a minor heart attack. And then I really had to settle on a different path for a first project. And just going along the lines of a truly great single-handed triode amp, this is another one of those, and it uses Tamura output transformers. And basically for the price of one of these transformers, you can buy a nice amplifier. So it's not an easy start if you want to get started with that. There's another beauty. This is the Yamamoto amplifier using the 45 vacuum tube. Basically, this is half power output version of the 2A3. So you can get about 2 watts from this beauty, and about 3.5 watts per channel from this beauty. And if you want to build something like that, I would say it looks simple, because the schematics of these amplifiers are very straightforward. They use very few elements, but they are not beginners projects, not by a long shot. So these single-handed triodes are masterworks, and if you want to embark on building one, you have to be a master builder, which is just about as far away from a beginner's first project as moon landing is from your first trip on a bicycle. So with that fair warning, that's just a teaser about what are you to embark when you embark on building the perfect triode amplifier. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen as your first project, especially if you do not have a person who can supervise you personally. Doing that through online tutoring is not a possibility, and that's not because you are not eager enough, or you do not have the determination or desire. It's just not a beginner's project. So what is a beginner's project, and what is something that will be really exciting for you? I will share it soon, because I will share with you how I myself started on the DIY route, because I also started just like you. I had no mentor, so I embarked on my first projects just basically flying blind, flying solo, and later on I met only my mentor who taught me. But by the time I met him, I already built a working amplifier by that time. So I believe I can still help you on your path. So for those of you who do not want to build an amplifier right now, I get back to the initial proposition of this video, that why are things not working out when we want to build a perfect system. So when you plug in a new component that is better than before, then you are happy with it, and then you do another change, it's even better, and then you do another change which is supposed to be better again, but then everything is ruined and you do not find happiness with your system. And here is the reason for that. So this is the problem, because the sound qualities, uh, so we use different expressions, different terms to describe the sound. For example, there are the frequency extremes and the mid-range. And there's also imaging, dynamics, resolution, tonality. And I put them up in pairs. And that is not by chance, but it's because they work as opposite of the spectrum. So for example, if your new equipment has better frequency extremes, as a consequence, its mid-range suffers. If your equipment overemphasizes imaging, so you get better pinpoint imaging, better 3D space, then dynamics will suffer as a consequence. If your equipment has better resolution, then it will have worse tonality, and it's vice versa. If you want to improve your tonality, then there is a great chance that your resolution will suffer as a result. Or even if you are at the highest level, and you have an amplifier like this, even at this level, if this amplifier has a very nice tone, and as a consequence it will not have that sort of resolution that you get from those ultra high res systems. But those ultra high res systems have terrible tone, because they use certain aspects of the sound, such as phase, and they play around with it. They use EQ as a trick. They play with the EQ to artificially boost resolution. And I do not have time now to get into every of these aspects, but this is pretty much like the three big categories that you will find products. So if you want great mid-range, then you will have to compromise on the frequency extremes. Vice versa. If you want excellent frequency extremes, then your mid-range will suffer. You cannot have the two together. Or if you want to, then that will be at an extreme price. That's true for imaging and dynamics as well. For a reasonable price, you can have either or, but not the two together. Same thing with tone and resolution. So that's why today we have really cheap amplifiers which can give you much better resolution than they did 20 years ago. And this is the big change that we now see happening. And that's why the magazines and reviews call today's products so much superior than 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because they have much better resolution. However, as a consequence, the average tone quality is quite abysmal. And so this is just a little food for thought, just something to think about, that when you want to implement a change in your system, there is going to be consequences. And as always, our brain plays tricks on us. So for example, if you are looking for frequency extremes, and when you audition something new, a new amplifier, and you love it, all your brain will focus on is the increased extremes, the bass response, and the high frequencies. You will not notice that there's something wrong with the mid-range, because you are so excited that you finally get what you want. And it will take you a couple months of listening to that new product in your system, that when you start realizing that there are problems with the mid-range, but the problem is not yet big enough for you to be really turned off. However, maybe you get another pair of loudspeakers after you change your amp, and those loudspeakers do frequency extremes even better. So now the frequency extremes will be extremely overemphasized, and your mid-range will shrink even more. And that's when you will reach that point that despite having the excellent, your dream frequency extension, but the mid-range is so bad that you notice that you are not even turning on your system when you get home from work. So I hope this is a little bit of a food for thought for everyone. And this episode now was just to give rise to new ideas, new avenues of thinking. Um, just dig through your experiences, what you have experienced, what are your expectations, and just think about it. If you have different experiences, then you can comment and find out what is the discrepancy between my experience and your experience. And by the way, this experience that I shared with you about these qualities, about building amplifiers, it is not just my experience. This is me and a lot of my audio buddies, which is like a cumulative of 100+ years of audiophile experience that I just share with you in a nutshell, because I was not the only person who was in the shoes of a beginner amplifier builder. I had a lot of buddies that we embarked together and built our first single-handed triode amps from start. And that is what I will talk about in the next episode. So thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Bye bye.